A man stands on a pile of rubble, hundreds of years of ruin at his feet. In one hand, a trowel, in the other, a sword. Behind him, an entire city lies exposed. No walls, no gates, no protection. Around him, enemies are watching, waiting, plotting to kill him before he finishes. He is not a soldier. He is not a builder. He is a cupbearer, a servant who pours wine for a king. And in 52 days, he will do what no one else in a century could do. This is the story of Nehemiah's wall. The year is roughly 445 BC. Jerusalem, the city of David, the city of the temple, has been broken for generations. Its walls are rubble. Its gates are ash. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are burned with fire. Hundreds of miles away in the palace of Susa, a Jewish man named Nehemiah hears this news, and it undoes him. He sits down and weeps, mourning for days, fasting and praying before the God of heaven. He is not a prophet. He is not a king. He is a cupbearer to Artaxerxes, king of Persia, a man whose entire job is to stand near power and say nothing. But grief does not stay silent forever. One day, serving wine as he always does, the king notices something wrong.
Why is your face sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but sadness of heart,
the king asks. And Nehemiah, terrified by his own admission, answers honestly.
Why should my face not be sad, when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies waste, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?
What would you ask for if a king offered you anything?
Nehemiah asks to go home, to rebuild. And astonishingly, the king says yes. He is given letters of safe passage, timber for the gates, and an armed escort. But not everyone is pleased he's coming. Word travels fast. Two regional officials, Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite, hear that a man is coming to help the people of Israel, and it is very displeasing to them. Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem quietly. For 3 days, he says nothing to anyone. Then, in the dead of night, he takes a few men and rides out to inspect the ruins himself. The Valley Gate, the Dung Gate, the Fountain Gate, surveying the wreckage no one else has dared to look at closely. The officials did not know where he had gone or what he was doing. Then he gathers the people and tells them the plan.
Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer suffer derision.
And they answer with one voice.
Let us rise up and build!
The work begins, but so does the mockery. Sanballat and Tobiah laugh at them openly.
What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish in a day? Will they revive the stones from the dust, burned ones at that?
Tobiah adds his own insult.
Even a fox climbing up on their stone wall would break it down.
Ridicule is one thing, it gets worse. As the wall rises, all of it joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. The enemies stop laughing and start plotting. They conspire together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. This is no longer mockery. This is a threat of war. The people are exhausted. Rumors spread from every direction, from all the places where you must return to us, they will attack us. Fear begins to spread faster than the wall itself, so Nehemiah makes a decision that will define the entire project. He stations the people by family with swords, spears, and bows along the exposed sections of wall. Then, he says the words that will echo through every retelling of this story.
Do not be afraid of them! Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes."
From that day forward, the workforce transforms. Half of his servants work on construction and half hold the spears, shields, bows, and armor. Each of the builders has his sword strapped at his side while he builds. Picture it. A man laying stone with one hand, a weapon within reach of the other. A trumpeter standing beside Nehemiah, ready to sound the alarm the instant danger appears. They do not stop. They do not sleep in their clothes for weeks, keeping weapons literally in hand, even when fetching water. And still, the wall climbs higher. Would fear win? Would exhaustion win? Would the threats finally break them? They kept building. When brute intimidation fails, the enemies change tactics. This time, the danger comes disguised as diplomacy. Sanballat and Geshem send a message. "Come, let's meet, let's talk," in the plain of Ono. It sounds reasonable. It is not. They intended to do Nehemiah harm, as he later writes. He refuses once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. They repeat the invitation, and 4 times he sends the same answer back. "I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you?" When flattery fails, they try fear itself. A letter arrives accusing him publicly of plotting rebellion against the king, a lie designed to paralyze him with the threat of treason. Then comes the most dangerous trap of all, one wrapped in the language of faith. A man named Shemaiah, pretending to speak as a prophet, urges Nehemiah to hide inside the temple, claiming assassins are coming for him that very night. It is bait, and Nehemiah sees it.
"Should such a man as I flee? Would someone in my position go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in,"
he answers. He recognizes it for what it is. God had not sent him. But Shemaiah had been hired by Tobiah and Sanballat. Every weapon they had left: flattery, slander, fear, false religion, and none of it worked. So the wall was finished in 52 days. 52 days. A wall that had lain in ruins for over 100 years, rebuilt while under constant threat of attack, sabotage, and assassination. And even the enemies could not deny what had happened. When all our enemies heard of it, all the surrounding nations were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Later, the people gathered to dedicate the completed wall, with thanksgiving, choirs, and instruments celebrating in a joy so loud it could be heard far away. A trowel in one hand, a sword in the other, and a wall that should never have been finished anyway. Nehemiah wasn't a soldier or a professional builder. He was a servant who chose to act on his grief instead of staying comfortable. His enemies never stopped changing tactics: mockery, threats, false friendship, false prophecy. But he never stopped building, and he never let fear pull him off the wall. Sometimes the hardest part of God's work isn't starting it, it's refusing to come down once you've begun.
If this story moved you, let me know in the comments which one you want to see next, and subscribe so you never miss the next one.